Hello, audience. You're listening to the Breadcrumbs to Passion podcast, where we give you the breadcrumbs to your passion by inspiring you with deeper and connected conversations for you to have fun and live wholeheartedly.
Hi, I'm Amanda Giebel.
And I'm Jason French, your host of the Breadcrumbs to Passion podcast.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 13, Forgiveness.
Hi, Amanda. Great to see you again this week as we unpack this particular topic around forgiveness.
Yes, we're here. This is our last week, actually, for 2021.
Yeah, so that's going to be great for anyone who has any, questions or anything that they would like us to cover for topics for 2022. Please reach out to us in the group because we'll be able to make that happen for you in 2022. As we were talking, let's delve into forgiveness. What do you think forgiveness is?
Well, as we were discussing before, it's that art of forgiving ourselves, but also forgiving another person as well. If we don't forgive, well, then forgiveness can fester in our body and cause anxiety, depression, anger, have all these negative emotions and these thought forms that we can just take that responsibility and ownership back to ourselves to actually forgive. Well, then that pathway for better health as well.
Yeah, something that was just coming to my mind as you were saying that was around forgiveness. Around a lot of people struggle with forgiveness and, like you said, get that anger, resentment, all that sort of stuff. But it's actually about, I feel that the reason why people struggle to forgive is because that fear of being vulnerable again and hurt again and that pain and so forth that they're actually experiencing right now. Yeah. It's like, do I really want to go back there? And I think, like you said before, when we got on the call, is about that place of expectation. Do you know what I mean? It's that expectation that we have placed upon us that we need to forgive and forget. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it takes away from the actual learning or the lesson that we're actually learning about for ourselves. And like you were saying, learning to forgive ourselves is the hardest part of that.
Yeah. It's quite easy for someone to say, like you were saying, just forgive this person. That is okay, but it doesn't mean we have to forget about what has happened, because those are the lessons that we're meant to learn. They're bringing us to that greater awareness of, okay, there's something here that we have to focus in on, and when we do, then we can grow to that next level.
Yeah, which is what I was sharing with you before. It was around that understanding. When we come to that understanding that this person may only be in our life for a short time, it might be only for that lesson. Yes. It's not it, and it may be what we're actually forgiving ourselves for is actually the illusion or the expectation that we've bought into, rather than, or the story we've bought into, like where we talked last week around toxic bonds, that we were unaware of at the time. And so when we can realize where it may be somewhere where we've overcompensated or we've given ourselves without boundaries or something like that, what actually takes away from forgiveness is that place when you're expecting that person to be able to do the same for you, like as in that feel that void in you. So forgiveness is really that place of understanding where it is that you may be hurting is for your own evolution, hence why you need to forgive yourself for allowing, because you could have been thinking of you forgiving yourself for the behavior towards somebody else, because you was in that dysfunctionality that you were unaware of, but through that split, you can actually understand now. And that's why I think forgiveness really comes from that place of understanding, is how you engaged or how they engaged in this particular scenario for you get your lesson.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, victim mode. So if we're going into that situation blind or unaware, and we're projecting that onto someone else in that victim mode, like, oh, they need to do that, or they should apologize for doing this, or I don't accept their apology. It just, you're in that place where you think that you're more higher power than someone else. So you're not coming from a place where it's authentic and it's true and it's it's from a place where it's like a little bit of arrogance, thinking you're above someone else because you're not willing to let something go or really understand what's going on from a point of let's just get some awareness and move forward so this doesn't happen again, because guaranteed if we don't have that awareness and we're thinking like that arrogance, it's going to show up again.
Yeah, I mean, really, it does come back to us. Like, I mean, I can just think of scenarios now where people think that I haven't forgiven them, and like I've forgiven them, but the hardest part was actually forgiving myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because in that process, like it's like I had this habit of loving people more than they loved themselves. So, and it was a habit because it was just like a normal behavior. So what I had to learn about was forgiving myself, that I didn't have to feel responsible for somebody else's dysfunctionality. And that was a really hard one to crack, because it's that place of, and then, the other thing I find interesting about this is like, people say around unconditional love, there's this place of unconditional love that we've got to find. But unconditional love, I've seen this so many times, it's abused, like, and so it's learning to use discernment, is what I was sharing with you before. It's forgiveness is about discernment. It's not about, it's like, how many times do you forgive someone that continually murders someone that you love? Do you know what I mean? Like, if they're continually doing the pattern, there's going to be a point where you go, why did I just feed them somebody else to eat? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not a case of forgiving actions. So what forgiveness, I really believe, comes down to is a responsibility of like ownership. And I find that with me, like, I find it easier to forgive someone when there's ownership on their part, my part. Do you know what I mean? When there's no ownership and it's only coming from one person to own, that I struggle with that. I'll be open with that.
Well, look, I'm going to put my hand up, because my earlier relationships, I never took responsibility. I always projected that on someone else. Like, they did this, they did that. It was them. Like, why did they do this to me? Like that very victim mentality. Until then, I realized, like, hey, there's two people in this relationship, and I've got 50% of that, whatever's happening in this relationship, to take responsibility for. And that really changed my life, because prior to that, I was expecting someone else to take 99% of the responsibility, I guess, and me not standing in my power and going, actually, I own that I should have done that, or I could have done that better, or if I actually did this would be a better result or a different outcome.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me was around the protector. Do you know what I mean? When, like, my protector would come in to make sure that person was okay when they're vulnerable, to go into that space. But then I realized that some people, they actually like destroying themselves. So it's learning to it's that discernment again. Like, if you're being hurt by somebody that's hurting themselves, there's only so far you can help someone before they have to take responsibility. If they don't take responsibility in that process, it doesn't matter how many times you forgive or you forgive yourself, it's just going to keep on reoccurring.
Yeah, but it comes back to that mirror effect, like, so if someone's hurting at that level, well, then that's a good chance for you to go, hey, well, then obviously I'm hurting at this level as well. And there might be something else that's not recognized there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it all comes back to that learning, like when you can draw yourself out of what's actually happening, say it's a relationship of two people, and when you can draw yourself out and like look into it from in like a telescope, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, then, that's when you can really find some answers. But when no one's taking responsibility, that's that anger. And in a relationship, that anger gets to a point of breakup or domestic violence, or it can go on and on, murders, as you were saying before, because it's all that built up emotion in our body that is not getting leveled out.
So it's the actual, like, what I'm picking up from what you're sharing here as well is there's that level of responsibility for our own trauma that we need to process. And that may need to be a separation before you come to a mutual understanding, which is I'm big on as well. When you actually, I'm big on if you're in a toxic bond with someone, it's usually best to separate for you to clean up your stuff. And then when you come back together, there's a different kind of love and respect. You know, there's a different feel to it as well. It doesn't mean to say you'll be back together in normality or anything. It's just it's a new relationship. It's a new level, you know. So the reason why something separates is usually because it wasn't working. So in those situations, it could be like, I don't think it's just relationships as I'm saying this. I'm thinking it's also around, you know, people making financial choices, or it can be around health, you know. It's when someone looks at themselves in the mirror and goes, you know, I have let myself down so much.
Well, I've let myself go so much, like for health, or
like they go into that self-punishment stage, and it's hard for them to go and work on their health and also find forgiveness to where they've actually come to, you know, that realization. And I think, like I said, it's like, how did I get here? What is it that I let go of? What is it that I didn't respect? What is it that I didn't value? What is it that I didn't honor? What is it? They're the kind of questions I ask when it comes to a place of forgiveness, you know, like.
And then usually it's those quick fixes though, you know, like usually at that point it's like, well, how can I fix this now? Because I'm not good enough to be who I really want to be, or I just want instant results. And again, it's not taking that responsibility, because nothing comes that easy. It you know, it takes a while. If it's health, it takes a while to put on weight or to get to that really unhealthy stage where you're like, okay, I need to do something. But it's a process to backtrack that as well. And if we're wanting that instant gratification and we're not taking that responsibility, guess what? You may look really good now, but it's going to come back and bite you in a year.
Yeah, it's doing that work, you know. Like I always say that it's like, and forgiveness it's like, it's not something, I think people make it a little bit blasé and go, oh, you know, it's just forgive. I can't do that. Like, I have to come to that place of understanding. And I think there's a lot of people, even though they say, I forgive you, you can tell energetically when they have forgiven you or they haven't forgiven you. Because there is an awkwardness. There's an uncomfortable, it's like the elephant in the room. And what that comes down to is around communication. So how are you communicating on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level that brings that into alignment and forgiveness, you know, which it's coming in all areas. Like we say, physically, we may be triggered, emotionally, we may be triggered, and spiritually, we may minimize ourselves to make that person feel more comfortable. And that's not the way, you know, that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be having that openness and that connectedness and that maturity to come to that place of understanding.
Yeah, I guess that's a hard place when you're not aware, right? It all comes back to the responsibility, the awareness, you know, all ties in together. And what's one of the steps that we can take to be more aware? Like, how do we know that we need to forgive someone?
Great question. Do you want me to answer that?
Sure.
Okay. So how would I know that I need to forgive someone? Usually it's around understanding where I bought into a situation. If it's about forgiving myself, it's usually where is it like I let go, like for instance, where I had to forgive myself when I gained 35 kilos. And that process, what it was really around an inner child healing. You know, there was the little boy in me that I had to forgive, that I had not listened to him. I had all that sort of stuff. So there's that process that is one way of, usually forgiveness is coming from that little boy that's seeking, or little girl that's seeking or wanting something from somebody else to be validated, to be made significant. Yeah. So when the inner child is actually gone through that process of being seen, heard, and acknowledged, what you'll find is forgiveness becomes a lot easier. But if you're holding on to a narrative as the child, it makes it very difficult for you to, you're trying to be mature, but you're still caught in a child feeling unloved, and that's the conflict. So that's one part that I see how we can do it. Another part that I see is being open and vulnerable and leaning into that and communicating really effectively so that you can understand how each played a role in the scenario for it to come to that point. Yeah. And when you can come to that place of acceptance, then I find that forgiveness becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, I guess it's that fear that keeps the communication very low key. It comes, and we spoke about this last week,
which is trust.
Toxic bonds. Yeah, trust. You got to trust that, even if you do say something, that it's not going to come back and bite you.
Yeah. So, yeah. And the other thing too with that, and that's where discernment is really powerful, because like we said, if it's a toxic bond with someone that like is narcissistic, they will not allow you to, they will not see your point. They will always either play the victim, or they will even perpetrate even more. So if you're trying to get their forgiveness, or you're trying to seek forgiveness for yourself with them, like by getting understanding with them, you will never get it.
Well, wait, let's back that up. You may get it, but then it might come back and bite you. 99% of the time, when you're being forgiven, it will be flipped back on you at some later stage.
Yeah.
I can vouch for that 100%,
Yeah, but that's not actually forgiveness.
No, that's what I mean. But it's in that moment when you're having that conversation, it's like, yeah, I forgive you. Yeah. Let's get back to being great. Then soon as something goes wrong, like, whether that be 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, that's rehashed and brought back up.
That's what I mean. So even though they're saying it, that's why I'm saying someone can say I forgive you, but energetically, emotionally, physically, you can tell whether or not. But like you said, if you don't have that awareness, it's very hard for you to see if they're actually forgiving you.
Yeah. And also you just want to hear that anyway. So you kind of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah.
And which then comes back to that thing of fear again, doesn't
it? Fear. And then what happens? Then you lose the trust, because you were like, well, you forgave me, but now you're using that against me.
Yeah.
Trust. That one's broken too.
Yeah.
So basically we're just living in a broken world, and
yeah. And we're thinking that we're forgiving.
Yeah.
So if it's broken, I believe it's broken for a reason. So what it is how can you rebirth that? And really, like I'm saying, it's that rebirth really comes from understanding yourself, and it's learning the lessons that are actually presented. When something breaks down, it's usually teaching you around something around self-love, self-belief, courage. It's usually self-respect. Like they're the lessons that you're learning. It could also be around about facing fear. It could be around adversity. It could be around achievement. It could be around self-acknowledgement. It could be around self-fulfillment. It could be like, there's so many lessons. And I think a lot of people get caught up more on the things that they don't get, as opposed to things that they actually do get. So you got to find the balance in the both. Like if you can punish yourself, you can find love for yourself.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with fear. And that's the thing with forgiveness. So like we're saying, a lot of forgiveness, the reason why people struggle with it is really linked around that fear.
And that's why we have polarity in the world. That's why we have polarity in our lives, in our relationships, because we've got to see both sides.
Absolutely. Okay, so why do you think we would want to forgive?
I think, honestly, for health reasons, if it's festering inside of us, I just feel it's just going to build up and build up and build up. And this is how, it can lead into cancer, it can lead into really massive health issues, because it's these little murmurs that we keep getting, but we keep ignoring. So if we can forgive ourselves, forgive others, well, then we can move forward more peacefully.
Absolutely. I think that why we also do it is to heal ourselves and to find compassion for our evolution. Like when we
keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Keep growing, keep learning, keep expanding.
Absolutely. And if you can do that, like I find a lot of people, the reason why they struggle with forgiveness and they say that I'm not enough, like I said, someone might say, oh, I'm not enough. It's like, well, is that me or is that you, kind of thing? And that's where the discernment comes in. So then you got to go, if this is going to help me grow, how can I evolve from that? That's the way I kind of look at that as well. Like, it's really powerful to go to that place. I've had situations, where I've gone, oh, I don't feel enough. And then I'm like, well, if I don't feel enough, that's because there's a narrative that I'm telling myself. And that's who I need to forgive. I got to forgive that narrative I'm telling myself.
Yeah. Which is only there to protect us, really. Like, it's our ego stepping in to protect us from fear, anything that's our past hurt that's gone on. It's all there as a cover up. I think that the main thing is that we actually really, the more we can take responsibility to look further into any situation that's going on. I think that's at the end of the game. If you can do that for yourself, well, then it's going to be easier to forgive yourself. It's going to be easier to move on in peace, in harmony, and learn these lessons.
That's beautiful. That's exactly where I was thinking along that is forgiveness is really about that place of coming into peace, harmony with yourself.
Alignment, love.
Yeah, and love. Because at the end of the day, when you come with that place within yourself, you'll find that for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think while you focus on making it about forgiving somebody else rather than forgiving yourself for your choices, your decisions, that's the person you need to forgive. Like when you can forgive that. And I think that when you can forgive yourself for that, because you will own it. You'll take ownership of it and you'll go, yeah, you know what? This, and this. That's all. I think that's, as you just said that, it's just come to me like nice and clear there. It's like, I can actually forgive when I can forgive myself, but it's more the fact of that place where you just can feel that peace and harmony within yourself that you get the result that you're actually looking for. So what would be your summary of today's forgiveness chat?
Right. Well, I've got a few things written down here. So when we forgive someone, we forgive ourselves as well. Forgiveness gets us out of victim mode. It frees us. It frees our health. It allows us to move forward on our spiritual path or for our higher learning. It increases our self-esteem, so sense of that inner strength and safety, and it heals us to move forward in life with meaning and purpose.
Beautiful. I totally agree with everything you said there. The biggest thing for me that I find as well as a summary to today's session has been around forgiveness. Teaches you a lot about courage. It takes you to a place where you never thought you could possibly go to actually find forgiveness for yourself and for another. And when you find that courage, then you'll dare greatly, because I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned about forgiveness. It really taught me about coming into that place of courage, because it's not about anybody else. It's actually about ourselves.
Yeah, beautiful. And when we actually have stepped into courage and we can feel that peace and harmony, then we know that we're on the right track.
Absolutely. As always, thanks for your wonderful presence over the last 13 episodes. And I hope to all our listeners, I hope you have a wonderful and safe Christmas as we approach it. I know it seems like it's far away, but it's actually not.
8 weeks away.
Yeah, 8 weeks away. So, and then into the new year. So we'll look forward to keep you up to date and when we start back.
Yeah. All right. So lots of love, blessings, and light to everyone. Thank you for supporting us, and thank you for just being part of our journey, and trying to educate the world or educate more people on stepping into their own empowerment.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy. Be brave and be the change. Bye for now.
Bye.
The information contained in this presentation is of a general nature and based on presenters' personal experiences. It does not constitute specific advice. Always seek individual expert opinion to help with your specific needs and situation.